Ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome. Delighted to be joined this morning by Minister Dr. Daniel Mulino, who's taking the time to join us this morning just to give a window on his portfolio, a window on the key priorities. And Minister, a very delight to have you with us, and perhaps over to you.
Well, thanks very much, Richard. Can I just begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we're all meeting and pay respects to elders past, present and emerging. Can I acknowledge NIBA, but also to you, Richard, and also to the President, Nick Cook. I've dealt with both of you a lot over the years, and NIBA a lot over the years. I've dealt with NIBA way back when I was initially in the federal scene as an advisor in a previous Assistant Treasurer's office, and NIBA was one of the key stakeholders that I dealt with at that time when it came to insurance issues. And then, of course, I've dealt with NIBA over 6 years on the House Economics Committee. And now it's been really good in this first 6 months in this current role to deal with NIBA on a lot of issues in the insurance space. I just want to acknowledge the importance of NIBA in the broader economic ecosystem. Brokers obviously play a really key role. I saw this on my recent delegation, along with many of the leaders from the insurance industry. We met with a number of brokers, including Aon and Marsh McLennan, and had very detailed discussions on their perspectives on the broader economic scene and the insurance scene. But also, when I was very new to the role, I travelled to Taree after the floods that occurred there in the middle of the year, and a lot of the New South Wales mid-coast, and actually had quite a detailed discussion with a broker in Taree about a lot of the issues facing small business in obtaining insurance and making sure that it was fit for purpose. And I think for me, that goes to the heart of what insurance broking is about, that insurance sometimes can be purchased in a more generic way, but there are many situations where it needs to be more bespoke. And that's where brokers play a key role in making sure that from both the perspective of the consumer and the insurer, that the insurance particulars are set out in a way that's going to fit all parties and that they're clearly understood. So it's a shame I can't be at the conference this year. Unfortunately, with parliamentary sitting weeks and also a few other things going on, the diary is a bit of a congestion point at the minute. But look, I wish you all the best over the course of the conference. I know that the annual conference is a really important time for everybody to come together and discuss important issues. And thank you, Richard, for the chance to both say a few words about the importance of the conference, but also for you and I to discuss a couple of issues.
Fantastic. Thank you, Minister. You mentioned the international delegation that you've just returned from. I wonder whether you could perhaps shine the light on perhaps some of the key themes, key trends, key insights that you picked up on the trip.
Yeah, so one of the themes was that we met with the CEOs and as well a lot of the senior members of the teams of the reinsurers. So a lot of people involved in analytical work across a lot of different global risk trends. One thing that was a consistent message is that the trend in global losses is up. And that won't be a surprise to anybody. But look, it was really interesting to hear it from all of the big reinsurers, from Lloyd's, Munich Re, and Swiss Re. And one of the messages I took away is that what used to be a rare event, a $100 billion global loss profile for the major and secondary events, is now the norm. And I think last year we saw something in the order of 140 billion US. So look, this is an important backdrop for insurance markets in every economy. Because, of course, reinsurers ultimately, when they make those assessments about what the broader trend is, they pass that on. So that was one thing. It was also interesting to kind of drill down a bit to the fact that that's being driven by both an increase in the frequency and severity of events, but also there being more assets in high-risk areas. So it's both of those trends. And I think we need to think about both of those both jointly, but also separately. They're distinct issues. But then I think the other thing that was really important from the reinsurers was their assessment of some of the broader global risks. So whether that be geopolitical risks, which no country's immune from, climate change, technological change. So they provided really useful insights. As I mentioned, we also met with Aon and Marsh McLennan, and we got useful insights from some of the big brokers. And then we also talked to a range of insurers, some more locally oriented, some like Allianz, who have a really global footprint, and they provided very useful insights too. So yeah, well, look, it was a very useful delegation, and I think reinforced to me a lot of the bigger issues that we're going to have to grapple with in insurance.
Yeah, great insight. Do you think any of those things immediately are going to shape some of your policy thinking as you've now come back?
Well, look, I think one thing that was heartening was that when a lot of the big international players heard about the Hazard Insurance Partnership and the DRF and the way that the HIP is seeing government and industry working together, but also the way that it's informing our rollout of mitigation projects, they thought that was, or many commented to me that that was world leading in many regards. So I think what it did was to reinforce that we need to continue to push ahead on that front. Reducing underlying risks is obviously a key way that we can deal with insurance affordability, but also just to protect people more. I mean, that's the bottom line here, is that when you reduce the underlying risk, you reduce people's exposure to all of the economic damage and the stress and the heartache of being exposed to hazards and natural disasters. So I think that was one thing that came out, that we need to continue our efforts when it comes to mitigation, but also informing our mitigation efforts by the best possible data and analysis and business cases. I think that there's already a lot of work underway in relation to the recommendations of the report that came out last year, which I chaired. So I'm now in the interesting position of, responding to a lot of that. So obviously the code is being reworked, and that's important work. And I think it's welcome. I think that the code will be enforceable and that the code will be approved by ASIC. So that's going to be important work, and there will be a lot of consumer protection mechanisms in the code that we need to step through. There are also, as you know, well, and all the members at the conference would know well, measures underway, both through the ICA working with the ACCC around standardizing terms like fair wear and tear and maintenance. And there's also potentially, work that we will start around standardizing terms for non-flood water damage. I think that's really important in providing greater certainty to consumers. And that's something brokers often get involved in, because I think it would make the work of brokers easier if we have, I think, standardized key terms. So there's a lot of work going on there. And then there's broader issues around access and affordability for those with very high risk. And that's a complicated set of issues, but that's another set of issues that we'll also be looking at.
Yeah, that's awesome. Hey, just a quick step change, talking about regulatory simplification. There was the Treasurers Roundtable recently. There's broader consultation going on around regulatory simplification. How do you see this playing out in the insurance sector, and also kind of perhaps picking up the themes that come out of the Quality Advice Review? Any thoughts on those two things?
Yeah, so look, I think you're right. One of the key themes coming out of the Economic Reform Roundtable was what a lot of people started to describe as better regulation. So not necessarily always less, and not necessarily just getting rid of, but maybe making sure it's more fit for purpose. And I think it's not directly an insurance issue, but two of the things that came out of the Economic Reform Roundtable that I think are really important were some of the measures to improve our capacity to build more homes. So, for example, freezing the National Construction Code, but also related issues around the EPBC Act, which is really important. And I think all of that's relevant to insurance in that it does affect the built environment, if you will. So those were really important steps forward. Look, I think when it comes to insurance, I think there was a broader desire to have a look at the way in which all the different regulators in different sectors work together. Obviously, in financial services, and this includes insurance, there are a number of regulators. So that would include, ASIC, APRA, ACCC, but also AFCA and then some of the code compliance bodies and others. So I think there's a feeling that what we need to do is to, where possible, align the actions of those regulators. And one simple area, or not simple, one area we might first look at, because everything ends up being not simple in practice, but one area we might look at is data collection from entities, for example, and just to try to line up the regulator asks where possible. I start from the proposition that we should remove unnecessary red tape, but I also acknowledge that most regulation is there for a good reason. So we just have to carefully step through, looking at regulation and rationalizing it where possible. But I think one of the messages that came out of the Economic Reform Roundtable is that where there are multiple regulators, we should be looking at trying to align their actions as much as possible.
Minister, thank you for that roundup. Seems like it's been a super busy initial 6 months for you. NIBA's really appreciated working with you. We look forward, of course, to working with you over the balance of the term. Big initiatives and big projects to focus on. For now, on behalf of all of the members of NIBA and those of us gathered at the conference, a big round of applause, and we look forward to seeing you in Canberra sometime soon. Bye for now.